The seeds never were, and mankind remains unforgiven.
Crimson lights the sky, the birds still asleep. Like a dream, it shines from heaven's safe key.
This song comes from a game called Drakengard, one of the best worst games of all time. It was also way ahead of its time. On their own, the individual elements of the game aren't great. The gameplay is terrible, the music is ear-grating, and the controls suck. The one element to this game that isn't terrible on its own is the story. The story of this game is amazing, and what it ends up branching out into is even better. But that is a story for another time. Today, I will focus on the unique music of this game. The music is much unlike any video game music from its time, in part due to the new technology which arose around the time of Drakengard's development. This Italian guy, Mattia Merlini, who is a PhD fellow at the University of Milan and holds an MA in musicology and an additional MA in philosophy, who I would bet I know what he's talking about, decided to mention Drakengard in his paper on the streaming revolution. He says this on Drakengard's music. Being able to use recorded music also meant that composers could manipulate samples from recorded music to build more experimental tracks that could not exist in earlier console generations. For instance, Nobuyoshi Sano's track for Drakengard features newly recorded performances of classical music, chopped down and remixed in a hip-hop fashion. This chopping down and remixing classical music resulted in a totally awesome sounding soundtrack that sounds something like this. Many would consider something like this to be one of the worst things they've ever heard in their life. I would agree. But I argue that this soundtrack, in combination with this terrible gameplay, was intentionally designed to make you go insane. I guess I would be right in thinking this, because in this book I bought, called The Strange Works of Yoko Taro, From Drakengard to Nier Automata, the author, Nicholas Tursev, who has an RNCP certification, a journalism school grade in written and web press, and a bachelor's degree in humanities and social sciences with a specialization in sociology from the University of Bordeaux II, found, altered through techno and music technology, the initial classical music extracts no longer resembled anything recognizable other than a long, contorted incantation or a never-ending tainted trance. This allowed the composer to corrupt anything familiar, to bring out the agony, echoing the mental cacophony of the characters and the horrors of the battlefield. The music of this game reflects the carnage and chaos of war and the mental state of the characters. These guys are not the most cheerful cast of characters. They're far from good people. This game was made almost like an anti-game or an anti-RPG. You are not rewarded for fighting and killing more and more. Rather, things get worse for the player and the characters. The music gets more and more chaotic as the game progresses, the story becoming more and more insane and terrifying as more people are killed. Xinlyu Tan, a game narrative designer with a Master of Arts, MA, Pacific and Asian Studies from the University of Victoria, found an interview with Yoko Taro. Tan summarizes it below. When Yoko was asked about his character's endings in previous works like R/G and Drakengard, he answered that it was hard to imagine that the protagonists could earn a good ending after killing so many enemies. And a bad ending is what they get, because ending E, the ending achieved by collecting every weapon in the game and getting all of the endings, which requires killing even more people, is the worst outcome. It results in dooming humanity to extinction in another world, and the main characters, Kaim and Angelus, dying. No other game from this time does this, and the music to reflect this outcome is equally horrifying. The music for the final boss battle sounds like this. It sounds like the end, and the game leaves you with this as the credits. And this is the last thing you see.